Why did no one notice the way she froze when that first radio transmission cracked through the operations center? Because everyone else heard panic. She heard something different, something she'd heard before. At 8:47 hours, the broken, desperate voice of Captain Morrison spilled out of the speakers, each word trembling against the static. Charlie 6 to any unit. We are taking precision fire. 3 casualties. Can't move. Can't get a fix on shooters. The room reacted instantly. Officers leaned forward, analysts hammered keys, radios switched channels. But Staff Sergeant Brooklyn Howard didn't move. Not yet. She just listened, still, composed, silent, as another round punched through the wall behind Morrison, missing him by inches. Everyone winced. Brooklyn blinked once. That was all. For a moment, she wasn't in the Tactical Operations Center in Syria. She was 12 years old again, lying in cold grass beside her father in Montana, hearing him whisper, "Always listen to what the bullets are saying, kid. They speak before the shooter ever does." But she pushed the memory aside. Later, not now. Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen stared at the digital map where the blinking icons of Charlie Company flashed red. "Where the hell are these shooters?" she demanded. Her voice was steady, but there was something inside it, something heavy. Fear, wrapped in command. Brooklyn heard that too. An intelligence officer raised the thermal feed. "Ma'am, we count at least 6 enemy snipers in elevated positions, interlocking fields of fire, professional placement, military optics. These aren't locals." Chen exhaled sharply. "Can our scout snipers get a solution?" They tried 40 minutes, no success. Every time they peek, they take fire. These enemy shooters are disciplined, coordinated there. He didn't finish. Because everyone already knew. They were unstoppable. Brooklyn sat in the far corner, quiet as a shadow. She rarely spoke unless spoken to. A 26-year-old figure with compact muscle, calm expression, dark hair in a perfect bun, eyes that absorbed everything without revealing anything. Her presence in the room was almost ghost-like. She didn't posture like the others. Didn't need to. She didn't look like someone who had eliminated elite snipers on 3 continents. She didn't look like someone who'd been trained in the most classified program the U.S. military almost refused to acknowledge. She looked like no one. Which was precisely why she was the most dangerous person in the room. Chen finally turned her way. "Howard, you've been watching. What do you think?" Brooklyn rose slowly, walked to the screen, studied it for exactly 8 seconds. Not 9, not 7, 8. "Ma'am," she said softly, "those enemy shooters are good, very good, well-trained, coordinated, disciplined, probably Russian-trained, but—" She paused, the room leaned in. "They're not unstoppable." Something shifted, it wasn't loud, but everyone felt it. Chen narrowed her eyes. "Can you stop them?" "Yes, ma'am." "A breath." "All 6, give me 18 minutes. Silence flooded the room. 40 minutes of failure. 3 Marine sniper teams unable to get even one clean engagement. An entire company trapped. And yet this small, quiet woman stood there saying she could eliminate 6 professionals in less time than it takes for a pot of coffee to finish brewing. Chen crossed her arms. 18 minutes, Staff Sergeant with respect. Brooklyn didn't raise her voice, didn't posture, just said it plainly. "I'm not a Marine Scout sniper." That wasn't arrogance, just fact. She moved toward the door, already shifting mentally into mission mode. "I need immediate high-low transport to Grid November 74, rifle and optics from the armory, direct comms to Charlie 6. Clock starts the moment my boots touch the ground." Chen's decision took less than a heartbeat. "Go," she said. "Show me what unstoppable really looks like." But what no one in that room knew, what no one could know, was the truth that pressed quietly against Brooklyn's ribs as she jogged down the hall, grabbing her gear, tightening straps, loading magazines. She wasn't calm. Not entirely. because something about Captain Morrison's voice had scraped open an old wound inside her, a voice she hadn't heard in years. Not his, but the tone, the panic of someone pinned, someone outmatched, someone calling for help that might not arrive in time. It wasn't fear she felt. It was guilt. She pushed it down, buried it, locked it behind years of training. But it was there. The helicopter rotors hammered overhead, kicking up dust, drowning thought. Brooklyn climbed aboard, pulling her modified M110 rifle close. She checked her suppressor, adjusted her scope, ran her thumb down the metal edge of the magazine, a quiet ritual she'd done before every mission. A small cut on her hand stung from an earlier scrape. She didn't stop it, didn't bandage it. Pain grounded her. The crew chief yelled, 30 seconds. Brooklyn closed her eyes. Why had that voice cut so deep? Why now? Why this mission? Her father's voice flickered again in the dark spaces of her mind. The most dangerous enemy isn't the one you see. It's the one you remember. She opened her eyes. The helicopter banked hard, buildings flashing past underneath. Charlie Company's trap position came into view, a kill zone of shattered concrete and open ground. Smoke rising, tracers cutting air. Chaos contained in one deadly intersection. The crew chief shouted again, 10 seconds. Brooklyn steadied her breath. She didn't fear the enemy. She feared failing to stay ahead of them, the same fear she'd buried since the mission that had gone wrong years ago, the one no one in this country knew about. She pushed deeper into the memory she avoided just for a moment. A different radio call, different voices, a different set of shooters she hadn't reached in time. No, not now. She inhaled deeply, then exhaled, slow, controlled. Her heartbeat settled into that familiar rhythm she'd trained for years to perfect. Breath steady, mind quiet. This was her element. Not the operations center. Not the briefing rooms. Here, on the edge between life and loss, where clarity sharpened like a blade. The helicopter touched the rooftop with a brief metallic shriek. G.O. Brooklyn stepped onto the concrete. The rotors thumped upward as the bird peeled away, leaving her alone 3 blocks from the 6 professionals who had pinned an entire U.S. company. The wind shifted, smoke parted. A single distant crack carried across the air, another Marine hit. Brooklyn's jaw tightened. Clock starts, she whispered. She dropped into a crouch behind an HVAC unit, unpacked her drag bag, and shouldered her rifle. The scope lens caught the morning light. She lowered her eye to it, the world shrinking into a precise circle of magnified chaos. Her voice entered the radio, calm as water. Charlie 6, this is Overwatch. I'm on station. Morrison's answer came instantly, shaky, raw, exhausted. Overwatch, thank God, we're pinned from every direction. They're ghosts, we can't. Brooklyn cut gently into his panic. I need your men to mark every shot the second it happens. Smoke if possible, verbal grid if not. Okay, but we never see them. They shoot and disappear. She scanned, searching not for shooters, but for what the battlefield whispered. Broken glass. Curtains that moved wrong. Dust displaced in patterns that didn't match the wind. Angles of fire that felt too perfect. The geometry of death. She heard her father again. Most people look for the shooter, but the shooter always leaves echoes. Learn to see the echoes, Brooke. Another shot cracked. A Marine screamed. Brooklyn tracked the sound, not the bullet. 2 degrees north, top floor. Something subtle shifted, a window that had been intact minutes ago now fractured. She didn't fire. She only whispered to herself. There you are. But she wasn't talking about that sniper. She was talking about the sinking feeling inside her, the thing she hadn't told anyone, not even Chen. Because something about this mission felt familiar. Too familiar. She steadied her breathing, knowing she couldn't afford distraction. She had 6 ghosts to hunt, 6 lives to save, 6 patterns to break, and she had exactly 17 minutes left. Why did the battlefield sound so calm to her when everyone else only heard chaos? Brooklyn wondered that for a fleeting second as she scanned the kill zone, the same question she'd asked herself on every mission since she was 17. Maybe because the noise outside had never been as loud as the noise she carried inside. A shout crackled through the radio. Movement, movement, northeast. Brooklyn's eye was already in the scope. She didn't blink, didn't react. The shot had come too quickly, too cleanly, too confidently. These enemy snipers weren't reckless, they were meticulous, and meticulous men believed in patterns. She studied the building again. A cracked window, dust still floating, the smallest ripple of air from a curtain settling. Not enough to shoot. Enough to remember. She whispered under her breath, barely audible even to herself. You fire one at a time. You rotate, that's your rhythm. Another Marine cried out over the radio, a hit, non-fatal, tearful breathing. Morrison cursing under his breath, trying not to unravel. Brooklyn didn't flinch. Her pulse stayed level, steady, even disconcertingly calm. But beneath that stillness, something else pressed upward, an old ache she hadn't felt this sharply in years. Not exactly fear, more like recognition. This pattern of fire. This discipline. This timing. She'd seen it before. But she shut the thought down. She didn't have the luxury of memory, not yet. She shifted positions on the rooftop, crawling with slow, deliberate care. Every movement she made minimized silhouette. Every angle she took optimized sightline. Her brain ran tactical calculations automatically, the way other people breathe. Charlie 6, she radioed softly. I need the next shot call within 1 second of impact. 1 second, we don't. You can, she said gently, and you will. Your men's lives depend on it. There was silence. Morrison exhaled hard, steadying himself. Copy, we'll do it. Brooklyn allowed herself a small, private exhale. Confidence was infectious. Fear was too. She needed them calm, needed their breathing steady so their voices didn't shake when calling out directions. Because if their fear passed through the radio, she'd feel it inside her, too close to the memories she kept sealed. Minutes passed, shots cracked, each one a breadcrumb, a clue, a ghost leaving fingerprints. She wasn't looking for the snipers. She was looking for their doctrine. 6 shooters, 6 angles, interlocking fields of fire, coordinated displacement. Someone trained them well. Someone taught them to think of the battlefield like a puzzle and to place themselves where the puzzle had only one solution. But every puzzle had a flaw. She just needed to find it. Her father had once told her, there's no such thing as perfect coverage. There's only coverage someone hasn't studied long enough. She studied for 8 minutes, enough. Brooklyn settled behind a new position. From here, the geometry opened. She saw the kill zone not as chaos, but as lines, angles of fire forming something like a web. She felt it click, a quiet shift in her mind. Charlie 6, she radioed, I have the pattern. You already have all 6. Yes. How, we haven't seen. They've told me everything I need to know, she whispered. Another shot cracked, sharp and surgical. A Marine gasped. Brooklyn didn't move. She just whispered again, that's 4 degrees south, secondary position. They're rotating every 70 seconds. Morrison trembled into the mic. Overwatch, how the hell are you? Stay down, Captain. Brooklyn braced her rifle and began her quiet countdown, not aloud, but inside her, the way she always did before she shattered a pattern. She needed the Marines to do one dangerous thing. Charlie 6, in 60 seconds I need a Marine to move from Building 2 to Building 3. Fast, low, unpredictable. He doesn't need to make it all the way, just long enough to draw fire. Overwatch, that's suicide. "No," she said softly, "not if I'm watching." There was a long pause, then a resigned breath. "Copy." Brooklyn closed her eyes for a moment, just one beat, long enough for the memory she'd been holding back to push through. Her father once again, years ago, gripping a radio in the Afghan mountains, yelling coordinates she couldn't reach in time. The gunfire, the silence that followed, the lesson she learned too late. Never be late again. Her eyes snapped open as the 60 seconds ended. The Marine burst into the open. Shots cracked too, sharp, professional. Brooklyn didn't fire, didn't even react. She traced where the bullets came from, one primary, one backup. Window, broken glass, subtle tilt of curtain. She whispered, "Got you." Not to him. To herself. She shifted, eased the rifle into the exact position she needed for her first engagement. She kept her breathing soft and shallow, the kind that felt like almost not breathing at all. Her eyes locked onto the faintest shadow behind a third-story window. Suppression fire erupted below, the Marines following her instructions. "Now," she squeezed. The suppressed M110 whispered, the body jerked, one down. Her heart didn't spike, her breath didn't change, she just moved. Second target, backup position, broken window, faint movement. She fired again. Two down. Morrison's breath hitched across the radio. "Overwatch 2, you already." "Stay focused," she whispered. She could feel her heartbeat rising now, not panic, but something like gravity pulling her deeper into the zone she rarely entered except in missions like these. It wasn't adrenaline, it wasn't excitement. It was the feeling of being exactly where she belonged, doing the thing she was born for, designed for, shaped by loss for. She rotated her body to the next angle, her mind running miles ahead. The next shooter would be relocating now, feeling for danger. The one after him would be hesitating, waiting for confirmation their teammate was alive. She calculated their movements by training, by doctrine, by prediction. But deeper than that, and she hated admitting it even in the quietest corners of her mind, she felt them. She understood the way snipers thought, not just because she'd studied them, but because she was one. "Charlie 6, she said softly, "smoke the intersection, all of it. Overwatch, if we do that we won't. You don't need to see, I do." The smoke grenades burst across the kill zone, blooming into a thick white haze. Chaos for everyone else. But clarity for her. Because snipers reacted to smoke in predictable ways. And predictable was fatal. She crawled across the rooftop, set up at a new angle and waited. A curtain fluttered. A figure moved. A shadow hesitated. Third shot. Third kill. Fourth shot. Fourth kill. Her breathing was steady, mechanical, almost detached, but inside her chest that old, unwelcome ache throbbed again. A reminder that no matter how perfect she made the math, she was still human, still hurt, still carrying ghosts. And now 2 ghosts remained. 2 shooters who were good enough to know they were being hunted. The 5th tried to run, she heard it before she saw it. The faint scrape of hurried footsteps amplified through the empty hallway behind the windows. She fired. 5 down. Only 1 remained. The smartest one. The quietest one. The one who hadn't made a mistake yet. Brooklyn exhaled softly. "Charlie 6, she whispered, "I need one more distraction. Overwatch, please tell me this one isn't." "It is." A Marine sprinted into the smoke-filled intersection. And Brooklyn didn't watch him. She watched the windows. The angles. The patterns. The places where she would be if she were the last sniper alive. And then she saw it, the faintest glint. Not a muzzle. A scope. He was hunting her. She smiled faintly, not with joy, with recognition. "You're good," she whispered. Then she squeezed. The glass exploded. The glint vanished. A rifle tumbled 4 floors and clattered onto the street. Silence. 18 minutes, 6 kills. But as she lowered her rifle, a strange, jagged thought cut through her composure. This pattern, this doctrine, she'd seen it once before. And the memory she'd been fighting since morning pressed harder, no longer willing to stay buried. Why did her hands feel heavier after the last shot than any of the ones before? Brooklyn asked herself that as she watched the Marine sprinting across the smoke-filled intersection, now completely safe. It should have felt like relief, like closure, like the clean click of an ending. But instead, something lodged in her chest like a shard of ice. Maybe because once the shooting stopped, silence had a way of cornering her, and silence was where memories waited. "Charlie 6, she called softly into the radio. "All enemy snipers neutralized. Confirm movement." For a moment there was nothing, a long, suspended nothing, the kind that stretched seconds into an eternity. She could almost hear Morrison's heartbeat through the static. Then, "We've got a Marine in the open. He's moving, still moving." A sharp breath. "No fire. Overwatch intersection is clear. I repeat, clear." The relief in his voice wasn't just relief. It was disbelief, awe, exhaustion, and something else, guilt. The guilt of a leader who had almost lost everyone and couldn't stop it. Brooklyn knew that feeling. She didn't want to remember why. She exhaled, long and controlled, and leaned her forehead against the rooftop's rough concrete. The surface felt warm under the rising sun, but her skin felt cold. She pulled back, forcing herself to breathe evenly as Morrison spoke again. "Overwatch, I mean how many, be honest." "6. 6 bodies cooling in the shadows of 6 broken windows." But that wasn't the hard part. The hard part was answering Morrison, knowing he'd carry the weight of those lost Marines long after today ended. "All of them," she said quietly. There was nothing bragging in her voice, nothing triumphant, just truth. A truth she didn't celebrate. Because celebrating kills was not the job. Ending them was. Morrison whispered something she barely caught, "How the hell?" But his mic cut out. Officers would be shouting orders now, medics rushing to wounded, Marines pulling their dead out of the street, the whole picture shifting from chaos to aftermath. She didn't move from the rooftop. Not yet. The ache in her chest wouldn't let her. "Why does it hurt more now?" she wondered. "This wasn't your first 6, won't be your last." But she knew why. She just refused to say it. The doctrine she'd recognized, the pattern of the enemy snipers, wasn't new to her. It belonged to a group she'd once crossed paths with years ago, a mission that had burned itself into the parts of her memory she kept locked away. She hoped this was coincidence. But deep down, she already knew better. The helicopter finally arrived for extract, its rotor wash scattering papers and loose dust across the rooftop. The crew chief waved her over, yelling something she couldn't hear over the roar. Brooklyn slung her rifle. Her fingers brushed the barrel and she felt the warmth still clinging to the metal. The last shot had been a long one, precise, clean. But the part of her that normally welcomed that precision felt nothing now. She climbed aboard. The bird lifted, leaving the kill zone beneath her. Smoke still drifted. Marines moved like small figures in controlled motion below, hauling stretchers, clearing rooms, reclaiming ground they hadn't been able to touch an hour ago. She should have felt proud. Instead, she felt that slow, unwelcome pressure in her ribs, the kind that came before the memories she couldn't afford. The crew chief tapped her helmet. "Ma'am, hell of a thing you did down there." She nodded once. He didn't see her eyes close for one brief second. Didn't see the flicker of the Afghan ridgeline flashing in her mind. Didn't hear the echoes of gunfire she couldn't stop years ago. Didn't know the one voice she'd never been able to save. Her father had always said snipers must learn to live with ghosts. But sometimes ghosts didn't want to live quietly. The helicopter touched down at the operations center. Officers swarmed before the rotors even settled. Chen stood at the front, arms crossed, eyes unreadable, not angry, not thrilled, simply trying to understand the impossible thing she just witnessed. "Staff Sergeant," Chen called, "inside now." Brooklyn followed her into the briefing room where screens froze on images of the buildings she'd cleared. Analysts paused video feeds from Marines, helmet cams showing the Marine who'd sprinted across the intersection, showing each man who'd hit the ground, showing window after window where no shots fired anymore. Chen lifted a remote and played a portion of the footage. Brooklyn's first kill. A suppressed crack. A body falling. A curtain swaying from the impact. A Marine whispering, "Holy." Chen paused the frame and turned slowly toward her. "What you did out there," she began, voice low, steady, controlled. "In 22 years I haven't seen anything like it." Brooklyn kept her expression measured, neutral, just pattern recognition, ma'am. Chen tilted her head. "Is that what you call it?" Brooklyn didn't answer. Because answering would require opening a door inside her she wasn't ready to open. One of the analysts, a younger lieutenant with eyes still too innocent for a battlefield like this, leaned forward. "How did you find all 6 positions? That fast? We didn't see anything on thermal." Brooklyn walked slowly to the screen. They weren't visible. She pointed at the geometry of the buildings. Their angles. The broken windows. The overlapping coverage. They were predictable. The lieutenant frowned. "Predictable, ma'am, they were Russian-trained." "Exactly," Brooklyn said softly. Something shifted in the room. The officers grew quiet. The analysts leaned in. That doctrine. Those rotations. The displacement timing. She knew it too well. Chen walked closer, her voice lowering. "Howard, this wasn't the first time you've seen this pattern, was it?" Brooklyn didn't blink. "No, ma'am." "And the last time you saw it, did it end the same way?" She looked at the floor. "No, ma'am." Chen studied her carefully, not as a superior officer studying a subordinate, but as a woman trying to understand another woman's wound. "What happened?" Brooklyn's throat tightened, a rare, dangerous thing. She kept her face still, hands steady, but inside something old and sharp twisted. She could hear it again, her father's voice on that radio years ago, pinned down by a sniper team using this exact doctrine. She'd been too far to reach him in time. Too slow, too young, too helpless. She swallowed hard. "Permission to skip that question, ma'am." Chen nodded. Not because it was protocol, but because she heard the fracture beneath the calm. The room shifted again. Officers murmured. Analysts took notes. Someone mentioned after-action reports. Someone else referenced training programs. Brooklyn tuned them out. Because something was bothering her more than the past. Something present. Something alive. She looked slowly at the 6 sniper positions on the screen and felt a chill crawl across her skin. The pattern was good. Professional. Russian-trained. But there was one detail she hadn't noticed until now. A detail that didn't belong. One of the backup positions had been set in a way Russian doctrine didn't teach, a variation she'd seen only once before. From one man. One specific sniper. Someone she thought was dead. Her stomach tightened. Chen noticed the shift in her expression. "What is it?" Brooklyn stared at the screen, voice barely above a whisper. "That last sniper, the one who didn't fire, the one who hunted me instead of engaging Marines." "Yes, what about him?" "That wasn't doctrine." "What was it then?" Brooklyn's voice went cold. "It was personal." Why did her pulse spike only now? After the mission was over, after the danger was gone, when she'd stayed calm through every shot? Brooklyn didn't know. Or maybe she did. Maybe her mind had been protecting her until the shooting stopped, until she'd done her job, until silence left her alone with the truth she'd been trying not to see. Chen watched her carefully, not suspicious, concerned there was a difference. "What do you mean personal?" she asked. Brooklyn stared at the frozen image of the last sniper's window, at the angle of the shutter, at the placement, at the lens glinting at just the wrong moment. Most snipers made mistakes because of fear. This one made a mistake because he wanted her to see him, because he wanted her to know he was there. She inhaled slowly. "Ma'am, there's a variation in his positioning. Russians don't teach it, Syrians don't use it, contractors don't either." Her voice thinned, the first fracture slipping through. "It's a technique someone else taught me to recognize, someone I thought was gone." Chen didn't respond. She didn't push. She simply waited, giving Brooklyn the silence she needed to get the words out. Brooklyn scanned the image again, fingers tightening on the table's edge. When a sniper tries to lure a counter-sniper, they adjust their observation angles toward the only rooftop where a counter-sniper could position. She tapped the screen. He wasn't looking at the Marines. He wasn't looking at the kill zone. He was scanning for me. Chen frowned, but he didn't know who you were. Brooklyn didn't answer right away. Did he? The question clawed at her. She hated how the possibility made her chest feel tight. Chen stepped closer. "Staff Sergeant, this is important. Was there someone in your past who used this exact method? Someone who would recognize your work or anticipate your placement?" The room felt too small, too bright, too loud even in silence. Brooklyn very rarely looked shaken. She looked shaken now. She lowered her voice to a whisper. "There was one, years ago, he was." She stopped. Not because she didn't know how to describe him, but because she didn't want to. Chen's tone softened. "Who was he?" Brooklyn looked at the screen, not at Chen. "A sniper, Russian-trained, operated independently, extremely skilled. Someone I encountered on a mission in Afghanistan." Chen crossed her arms. "What happened to him?" Brooklyn clenched her jaw. "I don't know." "Meaning?" "Meaning, I never saw the body." There it was, the truth she'd been pushing away since the first shot this morning. Chen nodded slowly. She wasn't surprised. Maybe she'd sensed this wasn't just another mission. "Staff Sergeant, if someone from your past resurfaced." "That's not possible," Brooklyn said quickly. Chen raised an eyebrow. "Why?" "Because," Brooklyn swallowed. "If he were alive, I'd have heard something. He wasn't the type to stay quiet." But deep inside, she knew that was a lie. He was the type to stay quiet. To wait. To watch. To study. And suddenly, her lungs felt too tight again. Chen tapped the image. "Let me ask you something simple. Did today feel like coincidence?" Brooklyn wanted to say yes. But she remembered the perfect angles. The discipline. The patience. The restraint. The way the last sniper didn't fire when he could have. She shook her head. "No, ma'am." Chen exhaled through her nose, slow and thoughtful. "If someone recognized your methods, they might have set the others up like this, to test you, to draw you out." Brooklyn felt her stomach twist, not fear, not guilt, something deeper, a recognition she didn't want. "The doctrine was too clean," she whispered, "too deliberate. Someone arranged it as if they were waiting for me." "Do you think he knew you were here?" Brooklyn closed her eyes for just a moment. "Ma'am, it felt like he did." That was when Chen made the decision, fast, sharp, instinctive. "We need intel confirming identities of all 6 enemy shooters. We need forensic analysis on their weapons. We need background on sniper units in this region." Brooklyn didn't argue. But she didn't feel steady either. For the first time in years, she felt exposed. Chen placed a hand on the table. "Howard, listen to me. If someone resurfaced from your past, you're not facing him alone." Brooklyn appreciated the sentiment. But some enemies weren't out there. Some were inside her, old failures, old memories, old ghosts. She stepped back from the table, breathing in through her nose, out through her mouth, grounding herself the same way she'd done as a kid lying beside her father in the woods. A knock on the door broke the tension. A Marine sergeant peeked in. "Ma'am, after-action report requested in briefing room 2. Immediate." Chen dismissed him and turned back to Brooklyn. "You good?" "Yes, ma'am." "Are you lying to me?" Brooklyn hesitated, then, "Yes, ma'am." Chen didn't push. She simply nodded. "Then let's get you decompressed before the next round of questions." But Brooklyn didn't leave. She couldn't. Not yet. She stared at the tactical map again, at the 6 buildings, at the primary angles, at the kill zone. And at the west building, the sniper who waited, the one who looked for her instead of the Marines. Her fingers trembled before she steadied them. Jen saw it. "You've hunted snipers all over the world," she said quietly. "But someone hunted you today, didn't they?" Brooklyn nodded, a small, fragile nod. "Yes." "And does that scare you?" Brooklyn took a long, quiet breath. "No." Chen tilted her head. "Then what does it do?" Brooklyn's answer wasn't loud. It wasn't confident. It wasn't detached. It was honest. "It hurts." Because she knew what that hurt meant. That someone out there didn't just know her methods, they knew her mind. Someone who had studied her before. Matched her before. Someone who knew how she hunted. Because once he'd hunted with her. A name whispered through her memory like a bullet slide. But she didn't say it. Not yet. She turned away from the screen, but the silence followed her, gripped her, held her breath hostage. Because for the first time in years, Brooklyn Howard wasn't sure she was the only ghost on the battlefield. Why did the hallway feel colder the moment she stepped out of the briefing room? Brooklyn slowed her pace, realizing the temperature hadn't changed. She had. The moment she left the glow of screens and the pressure of eyes studying her, the air felt different, lighter in some ways, heavier in others. A young Marine passing by nodded to her with reverence, almost awe. She nodded back, but her eyes didn't meet his for long. She hated that look, the one people gave her after missions like this. Like she wasn't a person but a thing, a myth, a weapon. She didn't feel like a weapon. She felt like a wound wearing a uniform. She pushed open the door to the gear room and placed her drag bag on the table. The rifle lay there, quiet and inert, but her fingers hesitated before disassembling it. She cleaned this rifle 1,000 times. It never made her pause. But today she couldn't help it. Because every time she blinked, she saw that last sniper's shutter swaying in the wind. Saw the glint. Felt the way his aim had never once drifted toward the Marines. Only toward her. She tried to refocus. She stripped the bolt, wiped the carbon from the chamber, ran a cloth down the barrel. All muscle memory. All perfect. But the actions didn't calm her the way they usually did. Instead, they sharpened the questions clawing at the back of her mind. How long had he been watching her? How long had he known she'd come? How long had he been waiting for her to take the bait? She tightened the suppressor, stopped. Her hand froze mid-turn. Because she remembered something, a tiny, insignificant detail at the time, but now it hit her with force. The last sniper had waited until she took her shot. Not reacted. Not ducked. Not hid. Waited. As if he wanted her to pull the trigger. A chill slid down her spine. She whispered to the empty room, "That wasn't a mistake, was it?" Someone behind her answered, "No, it was." Brooklyn spun, hand moving toward the pistol at her hip, but stopped when she saw who it was. Lieutenant Colonel Chen leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, face unreadable. "How long were you listening?" Brooklyn asked quietly. "Long enough." Brooklyn lowered her hand from her holster. Chen walked closer, boots echoing softly through the quiet gear room. "You need to talk about this." "I'm fine, ma'am." "No, you're not." Brooklyn looked down, jaw tightening. "Even if I wasn't, talking won't fix it. It might help you understand it." "I already understand it." Chen studied her with the patience of someone who'd led soldiers long enough to recognize the difference between stubbornness and silent pain. "And what do you understand?" Brooklyn breathed slowly, carefully, the way someone does when admitting something that cuts. "That shot I took," she whispered. "The last one, I think he let me take it." "Why would he do that?" Brooklyn swallowed, her voice cracked just slightly. "Because he wanted me to know he was there." Chen exhaled, not surprised, not shocked, just thoughtful. "Howard, I requested intel on all 6 bodies. Forensic examination, weapon signatures, clothing tags, tattoos, anything that could identify them." Brooklyn nodded but didn't look up. Chen continued. "Preliminary results just came in. 5 of the shooters match profiles of Russian-trained contractors operating in the region." "And the 6th?" Chen's silence was the answer. Brooklyn finally met her eyes. "There's no identity confirmed," she guessed. Chen shook her head. "No dog tags, no insignia, no serials, no match on prints, no scars in any database." Brooklyn blinked once slowly. "And his rifle?" "Unregistered, modified, no tracing." Brooklyn's chest constricted again, that same tight squeeze she hated. "Ma'am," she whispered, "I need to see him." Chen hesitated. "He's still being examined." "Ma'am." "No." The refusal wasn't harsh, it was protective. But Brooklyn felt the frustration rise anyway. She closed her eyes, inhaling until her lungs ached. Chen said softly, "Why is this hitting you so hard? I want the truth, not the tactical version, not the soldier version, the human version." Brooklyn clenched her jaw, hard. Because she knew the answer. She just didn't want to voice it. But Chen waited patient, unflinching. So Brooklyn forced the words out, slow and painful. "I wasn't always hunting him." Chen's eyebrows lifted slightly. "He used to be hunting with me." A long silence followed. Chen's voice dropped. "This man, he was your teammate." Brooklyn shook her head. "Your mentor." Another shake. Chen stepped closer. "Then who was he?" Brooklyn's voice was barely a whisper, a confession she'd never said aloud. "He was my equal." Chen absorbed that. And suddenly, the pieces formed a shape. "Someone you respected," she said. Brooklyn nodded. "Someone skilled." Another nod. "Someone whose mind worked like yours." "Yes." "And someone you couldn't kill last time." Brooklyn's eyes stung, the kind of pain she refused to show. "I didn't fail to kill him," she said, voice trembling. "I chose not to." Chen absorbed that with quiet understanding. "And now," she asked, "do you regret that choice?" Brooklyn didn't answer immediately. Because regret was a complicated thing. She remembered that night in Afghanistan. The wind. The distant fire. 2 snipers moving through the dark, one determined to leave alive, the other determined not to stop him. She had him in her sights. But she didn't pull the trigger. She never understood why. Not fully. Until today. She breathed out slowly. "Ma'am, the doctrine he used today, the positioning, the glint in the window, that wasn't just strategy." Chen stepped closer. "Then what was it?" Brooklyn closed her eyes in pain. "It was a message." Chen froze. "A message to you." Brooklyn nodded, one slow, devastated nod. "What message?" Brooklyn opened her eyes, those sharp, Hunter's eyes now clouded with something she had buried for years. "That he's not gone," she whispered. "That he's still out there, watching, waiting." Her breath hitched just slightly. "And that this isn't over." Chen let the weight of that sink in. Then she asked quietly, "What do you think he wants?" Brooklyn swallowed hard, staring down at her hands, the hands that had taken 6 lives today but still trembled now. She whispered the truth she feared most. "He wants me." Why did the lights overhead feel too bright, too sharp, too revealing? Brooklyn blinked against them as she left the gear room, Chen's words echoing behind her like a weight placed between her shoulder blades. "What do you think he wants?" "He wants me." She hated how easily those 3 words had slipped out. Hated how true they felt. The hallway outside the armory hummed with low conversation, Marines moving past her with hurried footsteps, medics rolling carts, officers clutching tablets. The world kept spinning. Missions kept happening. People kept breathing. Only she seemed frozen. It wasn't fear that held her still. It was recognition. She walked toward the exit doors, boots clicking softly on the tile. Every echo felt too loud. Every footstep a reminder she wasn't done with this day with him, no matter how many bodies lay cooling 3 blocks away. She pushed open the exterior door and stepped into the courtyard where vehicles were parked in neat rows. The air outside carried dust and heat, and the faint metallic scent of burned gunpowder drifting from the city. She inhaled deeply. She needed that. Fresh air. Space. Distance. But distance didn't help, because memories followed her anyway. Footsteps approached behind her. She didn't look, she recognized the cadence. Chen moved beside her. "You know you're not obligated to revisit old ghosts." "I don't have old ghosts," Brooklyn said quietly. "I have unfinished business." Chen studied her profile. "Is he a threat to you?" Brooklyn didn't answer immediately. Because threat wasn't the right word. Not for him. Not for what they'd been to each other, rivals, equals, reflections. 2 mirrors facing each other, infinite, dangerous. The kind of bond forged not by trust, but by understanding someone else's mind better than they understood their own. A threat. No. Something worse. "He's the only person who ever matched me," she finally said. "Shot for shot, move for move, thought for thought." Chen's brow furrowed. "Matched you or knew you?" Brooklyn swallowed. "Both." Chen didn't flinch at the admission. "Then you need to tell me about him." Brooklyn leaned against a parked Humvee, arms crossed, gaze fixed on the horizon. She hated thinking about him. Even the memory felt like stepping barefoot onto broken glass. "He wasn't part of any formal unit," she said. "Not fully. He drifted between Russian-trained groups, contractors, independent cells, but he was smarter than all of them, disciplined, cold, calculated." Chen waited. "But he understood people," Brooklyn continued. "Understood how snipers think, how they hide, how they breathe. He had this intuition, not trained, natural." "Like you," Chen said. Brooklyn looked away. The comparison hurt because it was true. "We met in Afghanistan," she said, voice tightening. "A multi-shooter situation near the ridgeline. I was junior back then, still learning, still scared sometimes." That admission felt like a confession. She rarely acknowledged fear, even to herself. "He was hunting a NATO convoy," she said. "I was tasked to stop him." "Alone?" Chen asked. "No, I had a spotter, good man, sharp, he." Her breath caught. "He didn't make it." Chen's expression softened, not pity, understanding. "I got the drop on the sniper," Brooklyn said. "Cornered him, had him dead to rights." "And you didn't take the shot?" "No." "Why?" Brooklyn dug her nails into her palms, grounding herself. "Because he looked straight at me," she whispered. "Right through the mist. No panic, no fear, like he was saying, go ahead. Chen frowned. That's not how people behave when they're about to die. No, Brooklyn said. It's how people behave when they don't believe you can kill them. Chen stepped closer. Did he fire at you? Brooklyn shook her head. He lowered his rifle. The memory washed over her like cold water. The distant ridge, the wind, her finger tightening on the trigger, his eyes unreadable, dark, steady. He didn't run, didn't try to fight. He just stepped back into the shadows and disappeared. And you let him. Brooklyn's voice cracked for the first time. I let him. Chen took a slow breath. And now he's here, using doctrine only he used, leaving signals only you notice. Brooklyn didn't deny it. Because denial wasn't possible anymore. Chen placed a hand on her shoulder. You're not responsible for what he's become. Brooklyn's jaw tightened. But I might be responsible for what he does next. Chen realized something then, something she hadn't understood until now. This isn't about fear, she said softly. You're not afraid he'll kill you. No, Brooklyn said. I'm afraid he'll make me hesitate again. Chen felt the air change, a subtle shift of emotional gravity. Howard, he manipulated you once. Don't let him do it again. Brooklyn looked at her with eyes haunted but sharp. I'm not worried about him manipulating me. Then what? I'm worried about who he'll go after to get to me. Chen stiffened. Brooklyn continued. He won't attack directly, that's not how he works. He'll create patterns that force me to respond. He'll create situations only I can see. He'll. She stopped. Because she just realized something. A detail she'd missed. She straightened slowly. Ma'am, the way those snipers were arranged today. Chen nodded. I thought the same thing, too deliberate. No, Brooklyn whispered, too clean. Chen frowned. Explain. Brooklyn's pulse quickened. He didn't just want me to see the pattern. What then? He wanted me to solve it. She felt it now, the awful clarity of understanding an enemy too well. He said a problem only I could solve, she whispered. He studied me. He predicted how I'd break it. He wanted to watch, to measure. Chen's stomach tightened. Measure what? Brooklyn looked at her with a kind of fear Chen had never seen in her before. My limits. The weight of that sank between them like a stone dropped in water. Chen whispered, Why test you now? Brooklyn's answer chilled her. Because he's planning something bigger, and he needs to know if I'm still fast enough to stop him. Chen held her breath. And if you are? Brooklyn shook her head. No, he doesn't want to know if I'm good enough. Then what does he want to know? Brooklyn's voice broke, a raw, painful truth. He wants to know if I'm good enough for him. Chen felt that like a punch. What does that mean? She whispered. Brooklyn finally said the thing she didn't want to speak aloud, the thing that scared her more than death, more than failure. It means he isn't trying to kill me. She swallowed hard. He's trying to bring me back. Why did the world suddenly feel smaller, as if the air around her compressed the moment she admitted the truth? Brooklyn stood there in the courtyard with Chen, heat rising off the asphalt, dust swirling around their boots, yet she felt cold. Not from fear. From inevitability. Chen studied her carefully. He's trying to bring you back to what? Brooklyn didn't answer at first. She looked at her hands, the hands that had taken 6 lives with surgical precision earlier, hands that never shook during a mission, hands that trembled now. He used to tell me, she whispered, that we weren't soldiers, not him, not me. We were patterns. We existed in the space between decisions, between breaths, between shots. Chen's expression darkened. That sounds like the thinking of someone who's lost the line between humanity and skill. Brooklyn nodded. He believed snipers were meant to be detached, cold, above morality, above the noise. He used to call it the clarity of distance. And you didn't agree. Brooklyn's breath hitched. I did once. That confession landed with the weight of an unspoken history. She finally looked up at Chen, eyes haunted. Before Afghanistan, before the mission that went wrong, I believed in the same things he did. I thought emotional attachment was weakness, that hesitation was death, that compassion didn't belong in our world. That's not who you are now, Chen said firmly. No, Brooklyn said softly, because I learned the hard way what happens when you shut your humanity off. The wind stirred dust around them, small spirals catching sunlight. Somewhere in the distance, a helicopter lifted off with a heavy thump, thump, thump. The base was alive, but around Brooklyn, everything felt silent. Chen stepped closer. Tell me what happened. What made you walk away from that mindset? Brooklyn closed her eyes, and for the first time, she didn't fight the memory that rose. My spotter, she whispered, Corporal Jonathan Hale. Chen didn't move. Brooklyn continued, voice threading between steadiness and fracture. We were pinned on that Afghan ridge. The sniper, him, had the angle. I had a counter-angle. It was a perfect chess match. Chen nodded softly, and I was so focused on outthinking him. I didn't notice Hale exposing himself to reposition. He was relying on me to call the shot before the enemy saw him move. Brooklyn's voice cracked. I waited too long. I treated the engagement like a puzzle instead of a life-or-death moment. She swallowed hard. He died because I hesitated, because I wanted the perfect shot, the perfect calculation, the perfect outcome. Chen's face softened, not with pity, but with understanding carved from years of watching soldiers carry invisible scars. And after that, Brooklyn said, I changed. I stopped chasing the perfection he taught. I learned to choose people over patterns, outcomes over elegance, humanity over clarity. Chen took a long breath, and he didn't. No, Brooklyn whispered. He embraced it even more. Chen folded her arms. So now he wants you back, because he thinks you're still what, like him. Brooklyn shook her head slowly. No, he knows I'm not like him anymore. That's why he's testing me. Chen frowned. Explain. Brooklyn stared at the dusty horizon, voice low and steady. He wants to know if the person I am now, the one who cares, the one who feels, the one who hesitates to protect rather than to perfect, can still match him. And if you can't? Brooklyn looked at Chen with a hollow kind of calm. Then he thinks he can break me, piece by piece, mission by mission, sniper by sniper, until he gets the version of me he wants. Chen exhaled sharply, anger flickering behind her composure. That's obsession. That's manipulation. It's who he is, Brooklyn said quietly. And who were you to him? Chen asked. Brooklyn closed her eyes. Not a lover. Not a partner. Not a teammate. Something much more dangerous. His mirror, she whispered. Chen absorbed that, the weight of it sinking in her expression. Two predators on opposite sides of a chessboard. Brooklyn nodded once. He understood me too well, and I understood him. Then why didn't he kill you in Afghanistan? Brooklyn swallowed. Because he didn't want me dead. He wanted me convinced. He thought he could pull me to his side. And you refused. Yes. And today, Chen asked, what does today mean? Brooklyn's throat tightened. It means he's still trying. Chen rested a hand on her shoulder, firm, anchoring. Brooklyn, listen to me. You are not going to face this man alone, not this time. But Brooklyn shook her head. You can't stop him, ma'am. That's not your decision. No, Brooklyn said softly, but it's the truth. Chen straightened. Then tell me how he operates. Tell me how he thinks. If you give us everything we can predict. Prediction doesn't work on him, Brooklyn interrupted. He doesn't follow doctrine, he makes doctrine. He adapts faster than anyone I've ever met, including me. Chen's jaw clenched. So what do we do? Brooklyn inhaled deeply, the air burning her lungs like truth she didn't want to speak. You wait, she whispered. For what? Chen asked. Brooklyn met her eyes with unsettling calm. For him to make the next move. Chen stared at her, stunned. You're telling me we stand still while a ghost from your past plays games with live ammunition and human lives? No, ma'am, Brooklyn said. I'm telling you he already has made his next move. Chen froze. Brooklyn continued softly, dread curling through her voice like smoke. Today wasn't the attack. Then what was it? Brooklyn's eyes darkened with a realization she'd been trying to avoid since morning. It was the introduction. Chen's spine stiffened. Howard, what are you saying? Brooklyn exhaled, a slow, shaking breath. He was never trying to win today. Her voice broke. He was saying hello. Why did dusk make everything feel more fragile? The sun had barely dipped behind the distant Syrian hills, but already the light felt thin, stretched out, tired. Brooklyn stood on the balcony outside the tactical center, elbows on the railing, watching the horizon bleed into dark. For hours after the mission, the base had buzzed like a hive. Reports, debriefs, intel sweeps, analysts cycling through camera feeds frame by frame, officers whispering theories in corners, everyone trying to understand how 6 professional snipers could fall so quickly and how one could still remain nameless. But now the base was quieter, and that was somehow worse. Chen stepped outside and leaned on the railing next to her. She didn't speak. She didn't need to. She learned that silence was the language Brooklyn understood best, the place where truth lived when courage faltered. Finally, Chen asked, "Do you think he saw everything he needed to?" Brooklyn watched a faint plume of smoke rise from the city ruins. "Yes." "And do you think he'll come for you directly?" Brooklyn shook her head. "That's not how he works." "Then how?" "He'll build a pattern," Brooklyn said. "Slow, careful, intentional. He'll create situations only I can decode. Traps disguised as puzzles, signals only I can see." Chen exhaled sharply. "Why you? Why not someone else?" Brooklyn didn't answer at first. She watched the last light fade over the shattered buildings, watched the shadows stretch across the empty roads. "Because," she whispered, "to him, I'm the only opponent worth playing." Chen stared at her, shocked by the calm with which she said it. "Brooklyn, that's not a game, that's obsession." Brooklyn's jaw tightened. He doesn't see the difference. "And you," Chen asked quietly, "do you?" Brooklyn forced herself to breathe. She didn't look away from the horizon. "I learned the difference the hard way." Chen nodded slowly. "Your spotter." Brooklyn closed her eyes. "My friend." A long silence stretched between them. Chen rested her arms on the railing. "So tell me, are you ready if he comes?" Brooklyn didn't answer immediately. She wasn't thinking about readiness. She was thinking about the last sniper's window. The deliberate glint. The invitation hidden inside the danger. The message only she was meant to understand. "It won't be like today," she finally said. "Next time he won't test my speed, he'll test my restraint." Chen frowned, meaning. Brooklyn swallowed. The evening air tasted of dust and something heavier. Memory, fate. "He'll put someone in harm's way to force my hand, someone innocent, someone who can't defend themselves. He'll want to see if I hesitate to save them." She paused, feeling the truth scrape like glass. "Because he knows that's who I am now." Chen's voice was softer than she expected. "A protector." Brooklyn shook her head gently. "A person." And somehow, that admission felt like the bravest thing she'd said all day. Chen looked at her, really looked at her. "You're not alone in this, Howard. I'll stand with you. The entire command will." "I know, ma'am." "So trust us." Brooklyn finally turned to her, eyes tired but clear. "I do, but he isn't testing command, he's testing me." Chen's jaw tightened. "Then we test him back." But Brooklyn smiled faintly, an exhausted, almost sorrowful smile. "You can't test someone who lives in the shadows. someone who prepares years in advance, someone who only shows his face when he wants to be seen. Then we wait, Chen said. Brooklyn nodded. We wait. The base was almost dark now. Only the perimeter lights glowed, throwing long silver streaks across the pavement. Brooklyn straightened. I need a minute alone, ma'am. Chen studied her, reading that quiet need not to isolate but to breathe without eyes on her, to feel human. Chen placed a hand on her shoulder, firm, steady. Don't carry this by yourself. Brooklyn nodded once, but didn't promise anything. Chen walked back inside. Brooklyn stayed. She leaned forward, arms on the railing, head bowed. The night pressed cold against her skin. She let the quiet wrap around her like a blanket, even though it felt more like a weight. She whispered into the empty darkness. What do you want from me? The wind carried no answer. But she imagined one anyway. One she'd heard years ago. A voice low, calm, too steady to be human. I want to see you become who you were meant to be. Brooklyn's hands curled into fists. She spoke again, voice cracking with the pain she tried to bury. That person died on a ridge in Afghanistan. But deep down, in the place she hated the most, she feared he didn't believe that. She feared he still saw her as something unfinished. And maybe he wasn't wrong. She lifted her head, staring at the dark horizon where city lights flickered against broken walls. Tomorrow there would be new orders, new missions, new maps, new faces. But tonight, standing alone above a battleground that still smelled of gunpowder and smoke, Brooklyn Howard allowed herself to feel something she almost never named. Loneliness. Not the kind that comes from being alone. The kind that comes from being understood too deeply by someone who should have been her enemy. Someone who might still be. Her breath trembled as she whispered into the wind. You won't pull me back. The wind didn't answer. The ghosts didn't fade. But the truth inside her stood firm, trembling, but unbroken. She stared ahead, heart steadying as a soft moral rose from somewhere deep inside her, a place untouched by rifles, doctrine, or war. Sometimes strength isn't the shot you take. It's the shot you refuse. Sometimes resilience isn't loud. It's the quiet decision to stay human when someone wants to strip that from you. And sometimes, dignity doesn't speak. It simply acts.